Hi, and welcome back to the EV Life podcast. I'm Crystal.
I'm Hannah.
We have a really great episode today because I speak to Nils Sodal, who is with the Norwegian Auto Federation.
Yeah, and so for those of you who don't know, Norway is actually really far ahead in their EV adoption. They actually had a goal in 2025 to reach 100% EV sales, and they're pretty much there.
Yeah.
So he kind of shares a little bit about that and what Norway is doing to support the increase in EV sales.
Yes, and it was actually a really great moment because when we first launched the EV Life podcast, the Norwegian Club was one of the first guests that we had on, and we just wanted to talk to them about this range testing that they did in winter with electric vehicles. It was so cool to us that this country kind of took it upon themselves to test out different EVs in winter conditions to see how the range actually stacks up against what the OEM says they'll get out of it. And then for the very first time, AMA and other CAA clubs got together this year and we did our own test influenced by the Norwegian Auto Federation. So Nils shares a little bit about those tests. They did their winter one this year and their summer one is coming up as well.
Yeah, it was a really interesting conversation.
Yes. So I do hope you'll enjoy my interview with Nils. And as always, if you have any thoughts or comments that you'd like to share, please do so in the EV Life group on the AMA mobile app. Hi, Nils. Thanks so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
Can you tell our audience who you are and who you work for?
My name is Nils Sodal. I work in the Norwegian Automobile Federation, NAF, as a senior communications advisor.
And can you tell me a little bit about the work that NAF does with electric vehicles?
We do a lot of different things, but the most important one is our big EV tests. We have since 2020 tested almost every model of EVs that has come to Norway, both in the summertime and in the wintertime. And the goal for the test is to give the consumers an indication of how well they perform, both in range and charging under different conditions.
Yeah, and we actually spoke to a colleague of yours a few years ago to just inquire about this range testing, particularly in winter. And since then, this year, we actually, AMA, along with other CAA clubs, got together and we did our very own range testing influenced by yours.
Yeah, I know. It's a well-known test, and the interest is, especially for the winter test, is high in every country, really, especially countries like Canada and other countries who actually have winter. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
And did you complete the winter tests for this year already in the beginning of the year?
Yes, in January we had this year's test, so it wasn't that cold in January. We had a little bit of strange winter in Norway, so it was actually 6 degrees over 0 Celsius on the mountains, so it wasn't a really cold. It was a mild weather.
Yeah, we also got mild weather, I guess, for Canada too, when we did our range testing, which is you're kind of always hoping that you get the coldest weather when you go out, but of course you don't really know what to expect.
You never know, because we have 2 days when we do this test, and the weather is how it is these days. So the first day we drive the range test, and the second day we do the charging test. So the weather is how it is, but the ultimate temperature really in Norway is not the coldest. If it's between 0 and minus 10 degrees Celsius, that's the best, because that's the normal winter temperature. Minus 25 isn't normal. So really, like minus 5 is optimal.
Yeah, when we did our battery test the second day, it was minus 24, 25. Oof. So it was perfect for the test purposes for us.
Yeah.
But
that's really cool.
Yeah. So, Norway is quite ahead of Canada in terms of its goals for electric vehicles. And one of those goals is getting to 100% of all new vehicle sales being electric vehicles this year. So I'm just curious to know if you can share a little bit about how far along Norway is reaching that goal.
We mean that we are reaching the goal because now the sales of new cars, also ordinary cars, that's not, I don't know in English what is, the people, also person's cars.
Yeah.
Are at the last, in April, it was 97% of the new sales were EVs. And every month except one has been around 95% this year. So if we reach 95 for all practical purposes, we have reached the goal, because there are always a little minority who don't want it, but that's so small that it's okay with 95%, we think.
And the consensus around Norway to this, I guess, this target, was it primarily positive, or did it take I'm not quite sure exactly when the government sort of issued this goal. And I'm just curious to know what the reception was. Were people, for the most, I guess it's a little bit of a difficult question to answer.
Everybody laughed at it, and we did a survey in connection with the EV test in this winter. And still no one, very few believe that we will reach the goal. But that's 100%. So people don't think we will reach it now either, in spite that EVs have become mainstream in Norway. So everybody thinks, no, we'll never reach 100%. But in our heads, as I said earlier, 95% is good enough. So I think we have reached the goal, really, for all practical purposes. So
I would say 95, and you said in April it was 97%. That's pretty impressive.
Yes.
So I know, it's not too far off from that goal.
But
here in
Norway
Canada,
Norway is an ideal country for EVs. Okay, we have had benefits in taxes, and a lot of things have been done to make EVs mainstream. But also we don't drive that long distances here. Some parts of the country drive a little bit longer. It's pretty cheap electricity if you charge at home, so the fuel is very, very cheap. And we have a low speed on the we have very little highways, so the speed is pretty low on our journeys. So except from the cold and rain and snow and all those weather conditions, it's really a pretty ideal country for EVs, especially because we don't drive that fast. If you just drive highway, you use a lot of fuel. So in spite of we being a winter country, it's nice with an EV, and it's a lot of things that's good in the wintertime. You get the heat instantly in the car. It starts easily, and everything works okay. It's just the range that goes down. But now the range on new cars are the normal has been between 500 and 600 kilometers in range. That's enough before you have to charge. And so it's no problem with an EV in Norway.
Yeah, it sounds like typical commute in Norway is quite short. So what you're saying is, for the purposes of an everyday driver, it more than meets that. But one of the, the big concerns in Canada, people do have to go a little bit longer sometimes, depending on where they are. It is a vast country. And I guess one of the biggest concerns is charging infrastructure. So I'm just curious to know what it's like there, because of the typical commute being shorter and most people are probably charging at home. Is there that same fear of there not being sufficient in public charging infrastructure?
Now it's a good infrastructure now in Norway, almost all over the country. It's just in the most remote areas it can be a little bit of a problem. So if you're driving between the big cities and so forth, it's no problem. Sometimes if it's holidays or long weekends, some charging stations can a little bit queuing.
Oh,
Yeah, but it's not a problem, and they usually work the chargers, but not always. So,
right.
but it's really not a problem, and it's been now it's the EV as a new car. It's the normal for
It's
the
the norm
buyers.
there.
But still, most of the Norwegian cars are not electric. But we have a little bit over 800,000 electric cars on the
Okay.
roads. But there are 2 million petrol and diesel cars. So it's still 2 million that will make the change the coming decade or so.
Right. So are there challenges that Norway is still struggling with as, more people are converting to EVs?
Yes, we have discovered some challenges, but that's not that crucial. But now the cars are so good that the charging infrastructure can't give you the amount of electricity that you are promised in the sales documents. So that's a bit of a problem, but it's not a big one, because still the cars, if they don't get the top of kilowatts, they still charge from 10 to 80% in under half an hour. So that's enough. When you have a charging stop, you stop and eat or drink coffee, then you can go. So really not a big problem, but we need the charging companies need to develop, and
Yeah. They
still a
keep
new
up.
technology, but we are in front, so we can't complain, really.
Yeah. So just going back now to the annual EV tests that you do, are there any new findings from the most recent one that you can share with us?
The new findings is that the cars go a little bit longer. Not that much, but longer than much longer than we started in 2020. They do that, and but the big change is in speed of charge.
Oh,
You
the speed
charge
of charge.
faster, and also this winter, the last test of the 26 cars we had, just 2 of them didn't have preheating of the battery before charging. So 24 out of 26 cars had preheating, and then you charge just as fast as you do in the summer if you use that, because the battery is preheated before you arrive at the charging station. So that's maybe the best thing for a winter country, that you get the preheating of the battery.
Yeah,
it's just a little bit complicated to use in many cars, because you have to plot. In some cars, you have to plot exactly the charging station in the navigation for the preheating to start, and you don't get the signal. Or is it preheating? Is it not?
Yeah.
So
You're not too sure.
it's still a little bit to work on for the car manufacturers to do this better for us consumers. But we saw that every of the car in the who did have preheating, they charged almost exactly at the same time as the WLTP, who is the standard in Europe.
Nice.
So that's a very, very good new thing in EVs, is that preheating of battery before charging.
Yeah, and you said you all are testing pretty much all the EVs that are being sold in Norway. So every year, are the cars selected just based on like what's new in the market, and you try to grab one of each?
Yeah, it's pretty much that. It's a new model, and we have a little definition of models also. It has to be new, but some can see that we have tested the Tesla Model Y, Model 3, and Model S several times. That's because it's not look like a new model, but the range is so much longer, or they have done something with the car that we see it as a new model. So especially longer range and faster charging. But it's all new models. It's based on that, and we get most of the cars pretty easily because it's important for the Norwegian importers of cars to be in the test. So and then we have the cars in the winter test and summer test. That's the theory of it.
Well, we will share links to those studies for our audience who are interested in checking that out. And I know there is an 8-hour difference. So for our audience, it's 7:45 a.m. here, and it's 4:45 for Nils. But so, we're opposite ends of our days. But I thank you so much for coming on the podcast and talking to me today.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the EV Life podcast. Make sure that you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. And if you'd like to join the conversation, you can always do so in the EV Life group on the AMA mobile app. We'll talk to you in the next episode.